We'll begin episode 9 with a helicopter that's taking the holograms to Houston, Texas. You can tell that Kimber's really excited of meeting everybody there. And so the helicopter goes to the house where the holograms that is made up with CB, Sally, and of course Sue Ellen, who had earlier made a bet of who could make $8 million by the end of the week. Also there was Sean Harrison that Kimber will be meeting up later. And so minutes later the helicopter with the holograms arrived, and of course the holograms wasted no time to perform with their song We Can Make a Difference. After that We Can Make a Difference song, that's when Jim meets up with Sally, and she told her that she's very sleepy right now, but she agrees to meet up with her later at the Astrodome. So after changing into Jerica and switching places, that's when she met up with Rio, Sally, and Sue. But then the holograms soon realized that they weren't alone because Eric and the Misfits had also showed up, and they made up with Sally. And that's when Sally told the Misfits the bad news that they're not going to be allowed to be on the live album, but she did agree for the Misfits to perform at the Shindig just the way it's planned. And that's when Possess tries to make a move on Sean, but she failed miserably, although Sean agrees that both Possess and Sean did have a history, but not anymore. Later at the guest house, that's when Pizzazz got upset with Eric because now, thanks to him, they're, as always, the Misfits, that is, are going to be performing second, while Jim, as always, will be performing first. But as always, Eric tells them not to worry because he, as always, has a plan. Plus, the Misfits refuse to let Eric change rooms with them since he's going to be out in the living room anyway. And that's when Eric walks into the kitchen, that's when he caught his attention by his right hand guy, Zipper. So we know what this means. That means Zipper will have to do another favor for Eric to make sure that holograms were not going to be performing at the Astrodome the way is planned. So the very next morning, Sally agrees for both Kimber and Jerica to do some writing, but stay away from Waters, and so the girls agreed. So while Jerica is busy chatting with Rio, in the meantime, Kimber, however, meets up with Sean. So Kimber was asked by Sean if they can go hayride later, and so Kimber agreed. So everybody was doing horse riding for a while, and that was until Sean gets a phone call, but did apologize to Kimber, but agrees to meet up with her later on. Even CB said that he had some businesses to take care of, so after the girls left, that's when they didn't know they were held up by Zipper and his goons. So Zipper and his men had held the girls hostage and then told them to go to the edge of the cliff. Kimber tries to fake a broken ankle to make sure that Zipper and his goons won't be taking them any further, but that is when Jerica, as always, has a plan. So she created a fake tidal wave, and that's when the bad guys ran off. So good news after the girls make it to the ranch, but there's a problem. CB said that Sean's been missing, and wouldn't you know it, later on that evening, Sean's with the mistress at the Jim's Country Club. And meanwhile there, the Misfits did what they knew best, perform and did their song, which is Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. And then after that, Sean just told Possess that he just lost his appetite and demanded to take him to Kimber right away. And so Possess agrees. So while Pizzazz was driving the car, she then insulted Sean by telling him how bad his personality was, and that's when they didn't see that there was a wagon coming their way, and they both collided. Well, good news, the holograms and of course CB that was there didn't get hurt, but although the wheel is missing, but that means the holograms will have to walk back to the ranch, and that's when Kimber sensed that something was off with Sean and told her sister that she's not speaking with him anymore. Later, at the phone booth, when Rio tried to reach Jericho, but he had no such luck, so after he finishes, it's now Zipper's turn to call Eric and told him the good news that everything went as planned. Also, he's going to be there at the Astrodome the very next day, and so that's what happened. So Zipper was collecting ticket sales money. At the same time, Jim and the holograms showed up the way it's planned, and that's when Jim told Kimber, "You must give Sean another chance. I'm sure he has a reason for it." And so when Sean shows up to apologize to Kimber, that's when she not only forgives him, but agrees to meet up with Jim a little later. But little didn't Kimber know is that Zipper and his goons decides to lock up Jim and the holograms in the storeroom. So meanwhile, back with Rio, while he's sitting wondering about where Jericho went, that's when Kimber shows up minutes later to ask him where everybody went. She's getting really worried. And that's when Rio told Kimber that in the last 2 days that she's the only person that he has contact with. That's because he has no luck reaching Jericho all night long. That's when Kimber told Rio that something must be off somehow. So long story short, Rio demanded to know from Kimber where Jericho went. So instead of telling him the truth, Kimber told her that Jericho's been sick, and so she decided to stay at the ranch house with Jim. Now, Kimber's telling Rio that she's worried about Asha and Shayna and has no idea where they were. So meanwhile, at the door of the storehouse, where one of the henchmen that works with Zipper went to check on the girls. But what the henchman didn't know is that the moment he left, he didn't realize that the girls had already made their escape in a ventilation shaft. So meanwhile, back with Zipper, who's Eric's right-hand guy, he just brought the money from the ticket booth, and he told Eric the good news. So after that, Eric agrees to put some of the money that Zipper had done and put it in a suitcase. So after that, both of the men left. Back with Jim and the girls who were in the ventilation shaft who overheard the conversation, which Zipper wasn't aware of, they tried to get out of the ventilation shaft but couldn't. So by the time Zipper comes back, thinking quickly, Zipper projected a rattlesnake that's appearing out of nowhere on top of the suitcase. And when Zipper saw the rattlesnake, or so he thought, that's when he ran off. Back with the girls, they managed to get out of the ventilation shaft and along with a suitcase full of money that was also there. So by minutes later, when Zipper comes back with a baseball bat, the suitcase is gone, and so were the girls. That was until the hitchman showed up minutes later to tell Zipper the bad news that the girls had escaped. Meanwhile, back with Eric, he just had a chat with both Sue and Sally to have a suggestion to have the mistress go on in the holograms' place instead. But then Kimber and Rio shows up to tell them that the holograms must go instead. So back with the girls who had recently escaped from Eric's office, that's when they tried to get away from Zipper and his goons that were chasing them. So when the holograms arrived on the number counter, that's when the announcer decided to say that the shindig was about to begin. So thanks to a net full of balloons, the holograms landed down safe on the stage and intact, and then minutes later Kimber shows up. So after the hologram song Share a Little Bit of Yourself, that's when they met up with Sue and Sally. And good news, they have a suitcase full of money, which is 250,000 bucks. But now here comes a bigger problem. They're about $50,000 short of their goal. So when Eric and the Mistress showed up minutes later, that's when Pizzazz got upset with Eric. But then Eric told Sally and, of course, Sue that it is true, that there is a 250,000 bucks inside that briefcase. And of course, Sally even told Eric that the money don't mean nothing when it comes to feeding the hungry, so all they need is $50,000 to reach the $8 million. So after Sally showed Eric the bill of 50,000 bucks, he has no choice to agree to sign the 50,000 bucks. And good news, both of the women had reached the $8 million mark, and then everybody cheered. So that ends episode 9.